This episode of the Flush Podcast is brought to you by North Dakota Tourism. Start planning your next hunting adventure in North Dakota at legendarynd.com. And by Onyx Hunt, the #1 GPS hunting map app. Onyx, know where you stand. Today we're talking about ways to fool late season pheasants. Tom Carpenter is my guest. He's the editor for the Pheasants Forever Journal and also happens to be a public land hunting master. He hunts birds all across the pheasant belt, and he's here today to help you put more birds in your game bag. Welcome to another episode of the Flush Podcast. I'm Travis Frank. I'm your host. Brandon Morton is our producer. Today's guest is Tom Carpenter, the editor for Pheasants Forever Journal. Carp, thanks for taking the time today to join us.
Oh, it's good to be here. You caught me on a day when I'm not pheasant hunting. Imagine that.
Imagine that. Yeah. Well, before we get started, I want to share an email that I got yesterday from a listener named Tyler. He reached out a few weeks ago asking questions, and I sent him some advice and also connected him with one of our mutual friends, Casey Weismantel, over in Aberdeen, South Dakota. Here's the email that Tyler sent back after his hunting trip. Hey guys, just wanted to give you a post-trip update and also thank you for your tips and suggestions. I got home from my 5th and final day of pheasant hunting last night. With your guys' input and a bunch of time spent on Onyx maps, I can definitely say it was a complete success. As you know, it was a self-guided trip. I stayed in a hotel in Aberdeen, and it was just myself and my 2 dogs. We had a couple daily limits, and at the end of it, I brought home 10 roosters for 5 days. The 1st and 5th day were short days due to traveling. More importantly, every single day I was in the field, it would hit me at some point that this is the South Dakota experience that I wanted. I have quite a few memories from the field of different flushes and retrieves, but my favorite one was on Thursday when it was just my pup Ember, a 1-year-old German short-haired pointer, and I. We were on a walk in access. As we approached a small circle of cattails, probably 35 yards in diameter, she picked up bird scent, and as soon as she went into the cover, 5 roosters and a hen flushed all at once. It was pure pandemonium. I picked up one of the roosters, shot at it, and immediately knew it wasn't a great hit, but it went down. I ended up missing the others in the chaos. So now I have a wounded bird in my hands. I sent Ember back into the cattails. Right away, she's searching hard, nose to the ground, all over this patch of cover. A couple minutes go by, and I'm getting worried. Where did the bird go? Suddenly, Ember turned and went out the backside of the cover, dead away from me at a high rate of speed, up and over a hill. So now I can't see her, and I'm a little concerned at this point. She wears a GPS collar, so I give it a glance, and it reads 110 yards out. I started making my way up to catch up to her, and all of a sudden, here she comes over the top of the hill with the wounded rooster in her mouth, bringing it right to me. I'll never forget it. Or on the final day, on another walk-in access, we had one bird in the bag. It's almost noon, and I wanted to get an early start home, so I picked a piece of cover and said, okay, this is the last push of the South Dakota experience. I even waited a minute to enjoy the moment. So I sent the dogs in, and boom, a textbook rooster flushes, giving me the most special closing memory of the week. What are the odds? I got the bird, by the way. It was a very special first South Dakota experience, and I will definitely be returning. Thanks again for taking time to give me some tips and sharing your knowledge with the fairly new public land pheasant hunter. Below are a few pictures from the week. Take care, Travis and Casey. Tyler. The pictures are great, by the way. I can't share them with you right now, but Carp, I think that's why we want to have this conversation today right there, is because we want to help people have experiences just like that. And I would also say, too, that I thoroughly enjoy getting these kind of messages. If you're going someplace that you want advice, I love to help. Carp, I mean, this is what you do every single day for a job, right? You want to help people, and you can be reached at Pheasants Forever as well. But today we want to help people find more birds. Late season is knocking on the doorstep. We're mid-season for a lot of the pheasant belt, and late season, December will be here very soon. And this early winter has put a lot of the birds into that late season mode. So, Carp, let's jump right in. Where was the last place you flushed a pheasant?
The last place I flushed a pheasant was Iowa, and that would have been on on Saturday, so two or 3 days ago now. I actually was in Iowa for 5 days. I spent 2 days with some Pheasants Forever chapter members, as well as some farmers that those chapter members help, and it's for a story for the journal. So I did get to, it was actually only the second piece of private land. I got pieces that I hunted this year. I'm largely a public land hunter. And it was about what's going on in Iowa with farmers and with habitat and how that habitat relates to good soil and water quality. And oh, by the way, these filter strips, these wetlands, these conservation reserve enhancement program wetlands, this pollinator habitat, all that ends up helping soil and water quality. Oh, by the way, it also helps pheasants and quail and all upland wildlife. So I did a couple days of that. And then Lark and I spent 3 days in northern Iowa, all on hunting public land, all by ourselves. And that was sort of a nice escape from hunting with groups, which I like to do, but we got to go and just hunt on our own. And so it was a good trip.
What region of Iowa did you guys hunt the public land together?
That was on across the northern tier of Iowa. I would call it from north central Iowa across to northwest Iowa.
What's the crop harvest like there?
100% in. I mean, there were maybe a field here or there, but I would call it 100% for all intents and purposes from what I saw. So that was good. That certainly helped the hunting. I often say, crops are an excuse to not hunt or to blame your lack of success. There's always going to be birds out in good habitat, and especially as season goes on. I mean, crops don't, unless it's a huge field like you might see in some places in South Dakota, where space is the protector, because you picture a cornfield that's up and there's snow on the ground. There's really not a lot for a pheasant to hide in their chief defense mechanism is being able to run and get away and see you coming. But to look back at earlier portions of the season, like the mid portion, sometimes crops can be a positive for you, because especially if you like hunting a golden hour and you know that birds are going to be coming out of those crops and into some nearby grass at the end of the day. You've got some, I would call it conserved birds there hiding in the crops that are going to be available for you. So, but bottom line was, in Iowa, I would call the crop harvest 95%, if not 100% there.
Okay. And how were the bird numbers?
I would call it very good. I had some challenging conditions. Of course, on the private land places, I had an opportunity to hunt. They were very good to excellent. The public land was good. We got birds every day, my dog and I. We had to work. You don't walk out there. I don't think there's very few places, unless you time it right and get lucky, on any public land where you're just going to go out and shoot them up. That's just not how it happens. But I always use a couple tips. And you mentioned when you were reading the email at the beginning of this and hunting with Ember. And one of the lines that you read in the email was, it was Thursday afternoon. And that's one of the tips I can give people is, I am a public land hunter and I use my vacation time, whatever I can wangle, to hunt weekdays, because most people just can't or won't do it. A lot of pheasant hunters maybe aren't as crazy as I am, and maybe they don't want to use their vacation time to hunt pheasants. They use it for deer or something else. Pheasants are fun. We'll do it on the weekends, but there truly is less hunting pressure on weekdays on public lands. And I would say, that's just one tip. Late season, any time of the season is do what you can to hunt during the weekdays if you're a public land hunter, because I noticed it in northern Iowa. I hunted, I did my work stuff Tuesday and Wednesday, and we hunted Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I would have probably preferred to do my personal hunting on the public land Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Even Friday, you can see people starting to show up a little bit. But that midweek hunting, you really have a lot of these places yourself. And I don't care if it's South Dakota, North Dakota, Western Minnesota, Iowa, even down into Kansas and Nebraska, sort of what I call those cores of the pheasant range. Weekdays are a great tip, and it's worth your time if you're serious about pheasant hunting. And so that was sort of the story.
Well, I almost wonder too, with a lot of people working remotely now, if you can just adjust your work schedule a little bit and say, hey, I'm not gonna take a PTO day here. I'm just gonna work Saturday and I'm gonna hunt Wednesday. It's just an idea.
Yeah, I see it all the time. I also know I haven't done it yet because I've been able to hunt enough, but a lot of people some people I know are with work at home type scenarios are staying somewhere else and working. They're getting up early and working till 3:00 and then going hunting, for the last couple hours of the day. And bless you if you live in pheasant range and you can just do that anyway. And I could do that, but I have to drive a couple hours I always say it takes me an hour to probably get where it's decent pheasant hunting, 2 to get to good pheasant hunting, and 3 to get to excellent pheasant hunting. And that just doesn't work if you've only got 2 hours to hunt, So there's another tip. If you see a nice week of weather coming, you have a place to stay, go stay somewhere. And if your work schedule allows it, and hunt those golden hours at the end of every day. A couple hours of good pheasant hunting is enough for most people, and your dog in a day. So that's another way to approach it.
Mm-hmm. Well, where do you call home, Carp?
I call home Plymouth, Minnesota. So I've lived in the West Metro for coming on 30 years now. Even more. I grew up in southwestern Wisconsin, pheasant hunting down there. I actually grew up in the height of CRP down there. At one point, the county I grew up in southwestern Wisconsin had, per capita, per land mass, the most CRP of any county in the country. So that's where I grew up. And you don't think of Wisconsin as pheasant central, but when I grew up there were pheasants coming out every corner of the woodwork when I was in high school and in college, and would come home because of the rampant CRP down there at that point.
So have you been a bird hunter your whole life then?
I have. I grew up with basset hounds. People who read some of my work know that I grew up with basset hounds. We always had basset hounds growing up, and we were very serious rabbit hunters. But before we got on to the rabbits, which was usually, about early December, after deer season, we'd get serious about rabbits. We were serious about pheasant hunting, and believe it or not, basset hounds make great pheasant dogs. They're slow, as you can imagine. They're careful, as you can imagine, and the roosters sort of don't know what's going on. They're used to, or a pressured rooster anyway. It's like, what the heck is this? There's this slow, sort of, plodding dog sort of keeping on, and they don't run as far. They sort of circle a little more. They get a little confused. So I grew up shooting a lot of roosters over basset hounds. We had some ruffed grouse around in those days down there, and we had quail too. There's no quail left down there now. I still love to hunt quail, but there's very few, if any, coveys left down there. So yeah, I've always been an upland hunter, but a little off the wall in my first upland dogs as basset hounds.
That's cool, though. I like that story. What was your path to working at Pheasants Forever, and how long have you been there now?
I've been at Pheasants Forever for coming on 3 years now this summer. And my path was basically, since I was in high school, I've always done outdoor writing. Even when I was, for instance, I've always kept hunting journals and hunting logs and wrote stories for myself. And at one point, when I was still in high school, my dad, who worked on the railroad for 41 years, said, well, you should write for other people too. Don't just write for yourself. And that just sort of stuck with me. And I always took his advice to heart. And he loved to hunt pheasants, by the way. I could tell stories about him and pheasant hunting all day. He sort of encouraged it. And I actually wrote some articles for my hometown paper when I was in high school and through college. And through my career, I won't go through all the steps. I did do I have done a couple stages of my career at outdoor media type companies, but I got the chance a couple years ago to come to Pheasants Forever and, really work for a cause I can believe in, and 120,000 other members can believe in, and that is the mission of upland habitat and hunting heritage, which is important these days. And so, long and short, my freelance writing all these years has always kept me, anchored in conservation in the outdoors. And, I've written for Outdoor Life, Field and Stream, Deer and Deer Hunting, Pointing Dog Journal, Delta Waterfowl, National Wild Turkey, all that broad outdoor repertoire of magazines and websites. But it's always sort of been, or not sort of been, it always has been upland hunting at the heart of who I am as an outdoors person. I always say sort of when I'm trout fishing, or especially like when I'm deer hunting, or if I'm blue crappie fishing in the spring, the conversation always comes back to bird hunting. So yeah. That's sort of what I am.
Yeah, I actually remember before our first time working together was before you worked at Pheasants Forever, and you interviewed me for an article you were writing about muskie fishing, of all things.
Yep. And,
and then once you took the job at Pheasants Forever, it was when we hunted the Sand Lake Refuge. Was that wasn't last year? That was the year before, right? 2 years ago.
Yeah, that would have been two Decembers ago.
That was Lark. That was Lark's first hunting year, right? Hunting season.
Yep, she was only 6 months old, and if anybody watches back to that episode of The Flush, there's some fun. You look at Lark, you go, "What's wrong?" Well, I keep, as people who know me know, I am a pretty simple. I take a very simple approach to training my dogs, and I think dogs are born. If you get the right dog, they know what to do. And I basically just teach them to trust me and want to be with me. And she wore long and short, she wore a check cord the whole season. I keep her on a 50-foot check cord, and that's how I keep sort of let my dog know what I want him to do. I teach him to quarter a little bit. I teach him to stay close. So a lot of my current dog, Lark, is Epinol Breton, which is, as I always say, is fancy for French Brittany. And I like to keep her real close. I keep her within Flushing dog range for the most part, especially when hunting pheasants, because we all know pheasants, especially wild public land birds, do not cooperate and sit nicely and for a point, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of birds you get with a pointing dog on wild roosters, that dog isn't locked up pointing. That dog is working on those birds, what I might call some people use the word creeping in a bad way. I call it a good way. That's when that dog knows there's a bird there. The bird is moving and the dog is following it, and you're following the dog. And there's nothing you can do. Some of those roosters will sit. You walk in and flush them, great. Most of them won't. A lot of birds. If you're a public land pheasant hunter with a pointing dog, you know that a classic, what I call lockdown point, is the exception rather than the rule, and you just accept it and go with it. That's why you're a public land hunter. So I'm pretty simple in the way I train my dogs. She knows what to do. She knows how to point. That was bred into her, and I teach her through friendship and love how to stay close to me and want to hunt for me and not her. And she scratched retrieving from her contract, but she is a hell of a bird finder when they are done. You told the story about Ember at the beginning here. Ember, the young GSP, went and retrieved the pheasant out in South Dakota. I winged one in similar fashion in Iowa this weekend. It fluttered down. I shot as it went down to try and put some anchor BBs in it. When the dog and I got over there, the bird got up and flew across a 160 acre, diagonally across a 160 acre WPA waterfowl area. And I saw where it landed. It gave me a reference by a little patch of willows. I took my dog over there, and we found it. She found it and pointed it, and it was buried under cover. And she doesn't retrieve, but we don't lose birds because she goes and finds them and stays with them. So that's sort of our agreement. But I probably could train her to retrieve and force fetch and stuff like that, but that's just not my style. We have an agreement and an understanding, and it works.
Well, it's fun. I bet, if you went back and watched that episode when we hunted, and you can, it's on our YouTube channel. Just go to theflush.tv and you'll see all the past season's episodes. But you can watch it, and I bet you would just laugh at some of the things that you saw, or of Lark or of you. And I mean, I know for a fact that we've filmed some shows with Daisy this hunting season, and from where she was at the start of hunting season in September to where she is right now, it's night and day difference. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even want to put that on television. I'm going to have emails flooding me or messages. Hey, you should have done this. I know what I should have done now because it's already happened, but I had to go through those things to learn a little bit. And I had to check cord on Daisy for several weeks to start the year, just to give me something to crap on when she goes flying by. But now she hunts for me. You said that before, but that Lark hunts for you. And now Daisy, she hunts for me. And it's a beautiful thing. And she's always watching me. And we've got this relationship now that we both know what we're out here doing. And just the progression of a dog, which is so fun to watch. And I'm sure everybody listening right now, or majority of listeners, have their dogs, and they can remember the mistakes that they've made with their dog when they were puppies to where they are now, and just kind of chuckle at some of those things. Anyway, now I'm just rambling here. Let's get back on topic. So yeah, okay. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say one other thing. I mean, two things. One, there's no right or wrong answers with dogs. The only right answer is, what are you and your dog comfortable with? And the second point is days afield. It's as simple as that. Your dog gets to hunt a lot. My dog, her first season 3 seasons ago, she hunted pheasants 43 days. I mean, that's not sharp tails and all the other things that we hunt too. Mm-hmm. You can train all summer long, but there's no substitute for hunting wild birds. And that's a whole nother show. But you're right. Just get out and hunt. There's no right or wrong answers. The only wrong answer is not hunting with your dog.
Right. That is. Well, Yeah, I'll leave it at that. I was going to say, because there's a lot of experts out there, and I bet you probably get a lot of feedback from people too. I mean, for the most part, I am an open book to here are my mistakes that I make, and people get to see them on television or hear them when I talk
Yep.
about them here. So I get messages, hey, do this, don't do this, so I do hear the right ways and the wrong ways, which I always think are, I mean, there's a lot of value to that. There's a lot of wisdom out there. And, we're just trying to communicate what we know and what we've learned and what we've experienced, right or wrong. Not trying to be an expert here by any means, other than just telling you what I see and what I, learned from it. So, and that kind of gets into our conversation. Let's try to bring it back in. So you and
Yep.
I last week, we were talking about the Pheasants Forever Journal, which is what you put together. And it kind of got me on the topic of thinking that we should do a how to outsmart late season birds. But you also said that you wrote an article that's coming out. When does the winter edition come out?
We're actually going to release this issue to the printer right before Thanksgiving next week. So
Okay.
it'll mail in early December, should be in homes mid-December.
Okay.
And that's, to me, that late season starts more or less December 1st. It changes a little bit with latitude. It really changes with your attitude, but it also changes with conditions. I mean, I'll offer this, and I wrote a post on this for Pheasants Forever a couple weeks ago. Is I was hunting December and October. We all know what happened on the northern plains here in
Yeah.
mid-October. We had that snow event and bitter Arctic cold, and it was literally December hunting in October. And we had some October and November, and now it looks like we're having some classic November. And but late season is also a state of the pheasant mind as much as anything. And by that, I mean, as public land hunters, we know these birds have been hunted, and they have been, for lack of a better word, hammered and educated. And that's part of the late season mystique too, is not only what are the conditions, but what are the birds acting like. To me, it's a two-pronged approach you have to consider.
Mm-hmm. You also wrote an article, or maybe you didn't write this one, but it was interesting to me. You sent over kind of a topic, and it was the ethics of late season hunting. What does that mean?
That's a companion article that goes with my winter article, and we can get into some of the ideas and techniques. My article is entitled "It Ain't Over Yet," and it's sort of and the subheadline is, "There are plenty of excuses for sitting out the late season for pheasants, but more reasons to just go hunting." That
Gotcha.
said, I've been out many times in conditions where pheasants are almost shutting down. It's Arctic cold. It's sandblast or wind. It's perhaps even wet, raining, sleet, or snow. And it spurred an article for me that I had another writer do, Anthony Houck, our former PR director at Pheasants Forever. He does some writing for us now. He's a fine upland hunter. Anybody who sort of knows the upland world knows about Anthony and his famous little field-bred cockers. That
Mm-hmm.
article is entitled "When to Call It." Is there a time when it's unethical to hunt late season pheasants? And more than a yes or no black and white answer, it's an it's a request for you to invest to make your own call as
Mm-hmm.
to, is there a time when the weather's too violent, perhaps you might use that word, to
Yeah.
pursue pheasants? Is it unfair? Is it unfair to the birds? And that's maybe after we talk about hunting them, it's maybe another topic, but it's a very intriguing thought that,
Mm-hmm.
am I taking too much of advantage of these birds? Am I rousting them out at a time where they really don't have a chance to get back in and nestled in and survive this? And
That.
a lot comes down to, you know, a biologist will tell you we don't need many roosters on the landscape come springtime. In fact, we don't want many roosters out there on the winter landscape competing with hens because they're bigger, they're tougher, they're more aggressive, and they outcompete hens for resources, i.e. food and cover. So there's a lot of reasons to shoot roosters, as many as you can shoot them. On the other hand, when you're out rousting roosters, you're rousting hens too. So anyway, that's what that article explores. And like I say, it's not a black and white answer, but it's an exploration.
Yeah, that's a really good topic. I was in North Dakota probably 4 or 5 years ago, and we were filming a show out in north of Bismarck or west of Bismarck, and it was brutal. I mean, it was nasty. It was 20 below zero, 30-mile-an-hour winds, and it was just raw. In the snow, they had 2 massive blizzards that dumped like 3 feet of snow. The drifts that were 15 feet tall. I'm not even exaggerating. And it was basically the birds were just pushed into shelter belts. The cattails, a lot of the cattail sloughs, you didn't even know that they existed there because they weren't visible. The cattails were all white. Everything had been filled in with snow. And it definitely crossed my mind when we were out there. It's like, well, I'm here. I got to film a TV show. We ended up doing a waterfowl hunt as well as the pheasant hunt to just take the pressure off pheasants. Because I remember thinking like, I don't know. Like I just was kind of torn, thinking about flushing these birds out of these shelter belts in these nasty conditions, and the response is 2 ways. What, like you said, those roosters, a lot of people take the roosters off their property at the end of season if they can, just to help the hens. And so we limited our hunt greatly. 1, because it was so nasty, but 2, because we just didn't want to force those birds out of the cover that they had left. It was very limited. So that's a good thought. It's a good article.
Yep.
I'm excited to read that one coming up.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Let's get into some late season tips to help you guys bag more roosters. But first, our friends in North Dakota want me to remind you that their bird numbers are up. And if you don't trust me, then just take a look at any of your friends' social media feeds that have hunted in North Dakota this season. They most likely have fistfuls of feathers in their photos. During the annual roadside counts this year, North Dakota's pheasants observed per 100 miles were up 38%. Sharptails were up 54%, and Hungarian partridge were up 45%. Now, I've been in North Dakota this hunting season, and I feel like those numbers might be playing it a little safe. I've seen incredible numbers of birds, and everybody I talk to says the same thing. And with an estimated 4 million breeding ducks, up 18% this year, North Dakota's central region is prime habitat for both hunting waterfowl and upland birds. Plus, North Dakota has more than 700,000 acres of private land open to public walk-in hunting. For the latest plots guide, visit the North Dakota Game and Fish Department or legendarynd.com. I use Onyx maps for many reasons. The most important reason is because, like my guest today, Tom Carpenter, I hunt a lot of public lands in places that I've never hunted before. Onyx maps give me peace of mind knowing that I'm always standing on public ground or land that I have permission to be on, and I can check my location while I'm walking in the field. Onyx maps are also a great scouting tool. I turn on the government layers in the state that I want to hunt, which essentially highlights lands that are open to the public. I start with a big picture view of the map, and then when I see the highlighted areas, I zoom in to take a closer look. I can drop a pin and drive right to the property that looks good. No more searching slowly online for information or big, bulky atlas maps. With the Onyx app, everything I need to know is right at my fingertips everywhere I go. That includes private landowner names in case I want to stop and ask for permission or to give them a call. Download the Onyx app right onto your smartphone and take it everywhere with you in the field. Onyx Maps, the best tool for every hunter to find and help know where you stand. Tom, how do you choose an area to hunt? Do you phone a friend, search online, search Onyx? What do you do to find your little nooks and crannies on public property?
You mean in general or for late season? You know, you talk about Onyx. I mean, I don't know what I do without Onyx. I mean, it's
Yeah.
people who my hunting partners know. I sort of they call it on. We call it Onyxing. I mean, Onyx is sort of my hobby. It's usually the last thing I do is when I go to bed
Yeah.
at night. I pull up Onyx and I look at it. I have pins dropped for with every public land bird I've shot since I've had Onyx. I put a picture on it of my bird. I know where those birds are. I have different color coding that I code. Like I've seen pheasants here, but not shot one. Like I'll tell you, I can tell you these secrets. Green is I've shot a public land bird here. Yellow is I know there are birds here because I saw them or somebody told me. And red is boy, this just looks good. And I can use the pheasant icon, and you can look at places on X, and now they have. I'm just getting into their 3D beta tool,
Yeah.
and you can really see what that cover looked like, and get a good idea. Like I've actually this weekend in Iowa, I found buried in a I'd call it or it's a WPA, a waterfowl production area of about 600 acres. I located a food plot in the middle of it. And I said, that looks like a corn food plot. And the dog and I hunted back there, and sure enough, it's a corn food plot. It was stubble, and we shot a rooster in the cattails next to it. Why? Because I looked at OnX and I found it. And so, what do I look for? Is crop fields and cover, especially as you get to late season. Now, I will say you don't necessarily, especially as the season goes on, they don't necessarily need to be right next to one another. In other words, as you get more and more snow, pheasants will fly to their food and then fly back, because when you get what we'll say 4 to 6 inches of snow or more, they don't want to walk through that. And to me, cover is the limiting factor, and you can tell. What does that mean? For the most part, in the upper Midwest, it means number one, wetlands and cattails, or number two, shelter velds and woody cover, or woody cover in the form of lowland willows, dogwood, plum. You name the species, but woody type cover, stuff that's going to stand up. We all love this classic, I call it pollinator habitat, the wildflower stems with a little blue stem grass in it. But as we get to late season, you need cover and you need food. As I said, the food doesn't have to be right next to the cover. Sometimes it is. Sometimes they can walk out of cattails and into corn stubble or soybean stubble. But a lot of times those cattails are removed. And if it's late season, they're removed because the grass between them and the corn is smushed down, as I would say it. And so they'll fly. Pheasants will fly. They'll fly half a mile to food and come back in. So looking for cover is, to me, the number one. It's the number one tip if you're looking for late season pheasants.
Absolutely. Is there a point? I mean, maybe I can just start talking about this too, but is there a point that pollinator grassland habitat that you're talking about? Is there a point that you say, I'm done even wasting my time on it? And how do you know when that comes?
When you don't find birds in it.
Right.
You just
Right.
gotta try it. I found birds in it when I started in Iowa. On my most recent hunt, there was 3 inches of snow in this pollinator habitat, and I went in it, and there were birds in it. And I've seen birds in it when there's 6 inches of snow in it. But there does come a point where they just don't want to walk in it. Cattails give them the only ability. Cattails give the birds the only ability when snow is getting really deep, to walk around and have a little mobility, which is what they want.
Yeah. I feel like that unfortunately, that beautiful habitat that did so well to help raise these birds is now, useless, at least in our area, because we're up here in Minnesota. Because I haven't seen them. I mean, basically, you got to go to the cattails in the trees right now. I haven't seen them in that beautiful grass for a couple of weeks already, which is unfortunate because everybody loves walking the easy walking stuff. But the reality is, from this point on, unless we do have some nice days in our forecast, and you can catch them in that thinner cover from time to time, but for the most part, we're talking about going where people don't like to go if you want to have success. When you pull up to a property, Carp, do you pull in the main parking lot?
No, I've talked about this a fair amount. People who know me know that. Well, I'd say two things. One is even before you pull up is to any place, whether you're going to a parking lot or not, and so I guess I'll start with number two is no, I will not. I seldom pull up to a parking lot. Why? Because everybody else does. And why?
Right.
Because everybody else pulls in and sees a common circuit, and they all walk it, and the birds know it. And I'll park at a different corner. It's not as convenient. You don't have a nice, easy parking area, but the birds aren't used to it. You have to do something out of the norm. They've been conditioned. Imagine it's December 1st and season's been open since October 15th, or let's say it's December 15th. Season's been open for 2 months. Probably 40 groups at least have come through this property, and they're always doing the same thing. You have to break it up. You have to do something different. So backing up from that, I will stop in town, I won't get ready at the vehicle. I will stop in town at Casey's or wherever we're going, and get in the back parking lot, get the dog out, get the collar on, get her little jacket on if it's cold and she needs it, get my boots on, get set up, everything set. And then what will I do? I'll pull up to a spot, let the dog out, and go. Especially in late season, if you're getting out there and you let the dog out to go to the bathroom and you're whistling, hey, get back here, and you're talking with your friends and it's a WPA, you're changing your shells out, etc. It's just pheasants know that, and they're getting out of Dodge right away. So even more so than not parking where everybody else is always parked is get ready before you even get there. Don't give pheasants 10 minutes of opportunity to know what's coming when you pull up, and get ready. Get ready before you pull up.
Absolutely. And the noise too, the noise. Last winter, you and I, we gave a seminar together at Pheasant Fest about this exact topic. And you and I, we pretty much hunt the same exact way. So we agree on a lot of these points, but the noise of people getting ready and when they're hunting. I told this story last winter during that seminar. I don't know if you remember this, Carp, but last hunting season, we were hunting late season birds in Minnesota on public land. We were filming a show, and the birds just kept outsmarting us. We were with some first time hunters and struggling a little bit. And we got to this section that we were going to hunt, and it had a ravine going through the middle, and it had a chunk of woods. And I said, okay, guys, before we even get anywhere near this, I am going to walk a full mile down and cut everything off. I'm going to stand up in the middle of the field because we've got to stop them from running. And these birds were running because we had so much snow and the water hadn't froze underneath the cattails, so it was just miserable hunting conditions. But we had this spot, and I was like, do not move from here. I will call you when you can move, and don't move until I get there, because I need to cut them off. Otherwise, they won't be in there when you arrive. So I get to the end of this section, and it's a plowed field, and I'm on the edge of it, and I call them. I say, okay, now you can walk in. And they had to walk a half a mile down the gravel road to get to the tree line that entered the draw that we were going to walk. They made it about 100 yards. It kind of came up this little rise on the gravel road. The gravel road, a quarter mile from the property, maybe even a little further, before they even got to the cover that the birds were in. they were already running towards me out in the middle of the field. I'm standing there. I start laughing to myself thinking, my goodness, how many of these pheasants have been running out of the field before we even step foot into it? These guys are quietly walking down a gravel road towards the property, and the birds are already running. Ended up, the birds saw me, whoa, put on the brakes, ran back into the cover, and they knew that they couldn't escape now. And just me being there. I mean, I wasn't like 10 people in the line posting. I was just one person standing there. It changed everything. Now, when these hunters walked in, the dogs were able to, work the birds, and they didn't just run right out the end of the cover, and ended up in some shots and some success. But it always, when I see that from that distance, it just reminds me like, ugh, these birds, I don't know how well they hear, but it's incredible. We need to do a study to find out how far away a pheasant can hear you coming.
Well, I always my simple analogy is this: treat pheasant hunting as you would deer hunting. Imagine if you're getting ready for a pheasant hunt that you are getting ready for a deer hunt, and that's as simple as I can put it. Next time you shoot a pheasant, take a look at its ear hole and see how big it is compared to its head. Next time, maybe skin out a pheasant head and look at the size of its eye. We always talk about, I'm a turkey hunter too. A turkey's eyeball is huge. Well, proportionally, a pheasant's eyeball is just as huge in that head. They see and they hear. And not only do they hear sounds across the air, they feel vibrations of footsteps. Take a look at their feet and see all the surface area for feeling vibrations on the ground. Somebody will laugh, but people who will laugh at that don't shoot as many pheasants as people who respect those senses of a pheasant, especially a late season bird that has been educated. In my story, I start with 3 misconceptions of late season and for late season pheasants. Misconception 1 is, and these would be excuses that people would use to not go hunting in the late season. 1 is, the birds are all shot out. There aren't any roosters left. And that's just not true. With survival mechanisms like we're talking about, there's always roosters left. Misconception 2 is, the birds left are too wild, I'll never get close. Well, there are tricks like you just talked about, which is an excellent trick, is they're going to want to go out the other end, and you figured out a way to stop them from doing that. And that's exactly what you have to do, is outsmart them with techniques like that. The other idea is when these birds start going, I would guess that as those hunters started moving in that cover, birds started moving and going and flushing wild. But if you keep going, and that's often how it goes with late season hunting, you hunt, the birds are grouped up. I'm in the birds, and they start going because there's 23 of them. Yeah. There's always going to be a rooster or 2 left that's either going to sit tight or let you walk past, and that's the rooster you want to get. It only takes 1 to make the hunt or to make the swing, and you have to be ready for that one bird, and you can't give up. And most of all, don't start running ahead when they start going. Keep the pace. Hopefully your dog doesn't get too excited, and keep on them. And even if you think they're all gone, keep hunting. And I had a perfect example of that in Iowa last weekend. Last week we hunted a field and got to the end, had shot some birds, and it was bad conditions. It was misting. It was about 34 degrees. There's a 20-mile-an-hour wind out of the northwest. That's late season conditions, if you ask me. We had one person had dropped a bird. We looked for it for probably, one of the birds dropped. We looked for probably 15 minutes with 4 dogs. Decided, well, these dogs aren't going to find that bird. We're done. We're standing around talking. Everybody's like, where's Lark? and Lark was pointing on the edge of the field. This was some nice pollinator type habitat.
Uh-huh.
We thought, first thing I thought was, oh, she's got that bird nailed. I walked over. I started digging in the grass in front of her to find the so-called, crippled bird, and out flushed a perfectly healthy rooster that sat through all that rigmarole, including 5 people standing around visiting. And fortunately, the landowner, he totally had enough sense and still had a shell in. He shot it. But that's how tight they sit in the late season. And there's always going to be one left. So the third misconception is it's too miserable to hunt. And this sort of gets into, is it too miserable for you? Or is it too miserable for the birds? And my tip with misconception 3 is, try and be flexible, whether you're thinking about a day hunt or maybe a late season journey to another state to hunt. Try and be flexible and be able to watch the weather. And if you see a bad weather week, maybe that's not the week you want to go. Maybe that week where it is going to be in the teens or 20s and a little sunshine is the time you want to go. You want to hunt birds and be tough, but you don't want to be miserable either. And then it comes to that point, alluding to back what we talked about earlier, is at some point it might be too harsh for even the birds.
Yeah. Yeah. On that topic of getting to the end of the property, that's a big thing. Everybody that I hunt with, when we're walking cover and we get to the end of it, I'm a stickler. I say, okay, let's just stand here for a minute. And then the dogs are kind of running around doing their thing. They might get to the end, give them some water, and guys are kind of, well, that was good, or disappointed, didn't see him. Like, let's just walk this last 15 feet one more time. Let's go back in. Just let the dogs nose around, because I can't even tell you how many times those birds we've walked by will hold so tight, and all of a sudden the dog will find one and they flush up, and you're like, you've got to be ready at the end. Those birds hold so tight, so tight. I mean, in grass that you wouldn't even think possible for a bird to hide in, they'll hide in it. They don't want to flush if they don't have to, but most of the time people hunt too fast. And I think that's the case in all the cover from start to finish. If when your first dog that you had was plodding around in there, you probably flushed piles of birds that other hunters would just go screaming right past. If you get into cover and there's tracks all over, and you get to the end and you didn't see any, or you saw a couple, and you're like, those two birds didn't match the amount of tracks that I saw in there, probably you walked right past them. That's the reality. Probably walked right past them. So a late season tip that I tell people all the time, slow down. And if you think you're going too slow, slow down even more, because those birds hold so tight, and you'll prove it. All it takes is you prove it one time where you walk and you're just barely moving and your dog finds one and it won't get up. But you're like, no, there's nothing there. And you keep kicking the grass. Your dog says there's one there. There's probably one there. Keep kicking the grass. Keep kicking it. Dig around. And when that bird explodes, it'll show you just how tight they're going to hold. And that is the reality on a lot of the birds out there are holding just that tight, and you are walking right past them. It happens every single day. Slow down.
Well, you hit my I had the 3 misconceptions, and I talk about 5 tactics, and you hit tactic 4 on the head, and that is hunt slow, then go slower. And I use words like zig, zag, backtrack, mosey, linger, and scour. If you think about those words, that's how I hunt late season pheasants. And I'll also go back through and hunt something. If there's a lot of tracks and I think there's birds there, it's like, I'll just go back and hunt it again. Who cares? You shoot more birds in the field hunting, even if you're hunting something you just hunted, than you do getting in your car and getting sort of warm and driving around and hoping for hoping to find another magical spot. It's like, this spot, you picked out this spot for a reason. And there's tracks here. The cover looks good. Go back through it. Some of the other tactics I talk about are, We covered the first one. Focus more on cover than food. Food has to be around, but it doesn't have to be right next door. Secondly is another late season tactic I like to use is, especially in states like Minnesota, where a 9 a.m. shooting opening, and South Dakota, where it's 10 a.m. is don't sleep in that late. I mean, it's pheasant hunting. You don't have to get up at duck hunting hours, but get up, warm up the car, load up the dogs, stop and get some coffee, go out and scout that hour before hunting time, see where the birds are feeding, where are they going to go. There's nothing wrong with being out there and seeing 28 birds feeding in a field and fly into a cattail slough, and a half an hour before shooting light, parking your vehicle in a strategic spot and claiming that public land spot for yourself. That's 100% perfectly allowable technique, and it's smart. Third is high grade your hunting spot selection. In other words, don't wait to hunt the best spot till later in the day. Why? One, somebody else might hunt it. And number two, conditions might go to heck. Why wait? It's late season. Hit your top spots right away. I mean, sure, there's always going to be, have something in your back pocket for the golden hour, but high grade it. Go to the best spot right away. Don't try and save it, especially if you're a public land hunter. Then we talked about 4. Hunt slow, then go slower. Enough said on that. And here's an interesting one. And I've always bucked trends and bucked conventional wisdom. I do not go to larger shot size for late season pheasants. I stick with what I shoot the rest of the season, which is usually a 6. And believe it or not, often a 7.5. Why? Think about this. Your pattern is better with smaller shot. And number 2, smaller shot penetrates feathers better than big shot. Big shot is more massive. Imagine a basketball hitting something, and imagine a golf ball hitting something, or we'll say a softball and a golf ball. The smaller shot penetrates better. And so I'm not saying go, I'm just saying I believe in the shot size you like the rest of the season in the late season. And the other reason being late season shots, believe it or not, are often closer than your earlier in the season shots, because just back to exactly what you said, if you're going to get birds in the late season, usually it's these what I call the hunkerers who are hunkering in, and you're going to have the dog's in there rooting them out, and you have plenty of time to get close, or your pointing dog is pointing and you're kicking around. So skip the larger shot in the late season. You don't need buckshot to kill them. And I'll give you an example. Last year, I went to Kansas for the last week of the season, hunting season, for quail and pheasants. I was mostly there for quail because I don't get a chance to hunt them that often. So what did I use? 7.5 shot. What did I see? A decent number of pheasants. Every one of them, and these are late season birds. Now it's Kansas, it's not North Dakota, but they're still pheasants. They're the same basic bird. They dropped like they were poleaxed with this 7.5 shot, because I was loaded for quail. But when you see a pheasant, you shoot it, And so anyway, those are some of my tactics. I guess the last idea I'd leave with relates back to what I just said is, don't discount the idea that you can go somewhere and travel and hunt for a late season. Think about Kansas, open till January 31st. Nebraska, open till January 31st. South Dakota, new this year, open until January 31st. That's a lot of extra hunting time, and especially with Kansas and somewhat from Nebraska. If you're from the northern plains, you're probably going to a place where the weather is milder. And I know that was the case last year for me. I left 1.5 foot of snow in Minnesota and was hunting in shirt sleeves on the Colorado border the next day. So, and that was a treat. So think about that for your late season too, is hit the road, try a new destination. And like I said, Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota are on that list. And even Iowa's open till, January 7th or so, not quite as late. But, if your season is closing up in your state, January doesn't have to be sit around midwinter mope time. Make it hunting time. Yeah,
Right.
there's birds in these states. They're late season birds, but with all the tactics and approaches we've talked about, there's ways to get them.
That's right. How do you feel about South Dakota extending their hunting season to the end of January?
I think the biologists would tell you that pressure isn't going to be that great on them. I think late season, by its very nature, really calls out hunting pressure. So I don't think it's going to have an appreciable effect on the bird population. But to be honest with you, that's part of the reason for our story that we sort of started talking about earlier in the podcast, when to call it, is the legality is there. I can hunt birds till January 1st in South Dakota. But what are the ethics? What if it's 30 below? What if it's 10 below zero with a 20-mile-an-hour wind and a biting snow flurries coming in, and it's the golden hour, and I see these pheasants settling into a cattail slough, and there's 20 minutes of shooting light left, but it's January, and I can hardly see to shoot anyway. What are my ethics? What am I going to do in my heart? What do I feel is right? Am I going to go bother these birds at this point? Or maybe am I going to limit my mid-season hunting to 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And as a hunt, and I'm speaking, hypothetically here, am I as a hunter going to say, I'm going to hunt pheasants from 10 to 2. These conditions are horrible. I'm not going to disturb these pheasants for the last 2 hours of the day. I'm going to let them feed. I'm going to let them nestle into their cattails. I'm not going to disturb them 10 minutes before dark when it's 10 below zero out. That's something hunters have to explore in their own heart. A biologist would tell you, killing more roosters doesn't hurt much of anything. Because A, you're not going to kill them all. B, as we've said, it's probably better for the hens that are left. Mm-hmm. But you got to think about the hens when you're chasing roosters too. So my bottom line is it's more hunting opportunity. That's what South Dakota creates. But like I said, that's part of the reason I had this article written about when to call it.
Well, Carp, a lot of good information today. Hopefully it helps people put a few more birds in the bag. Last question here. If you could only hunt one more place this season, where would that be and why?
Now, let me ask you this, Travis. How specific do I have to get?
I don't know. I just say, what's your favorite place to go hunt? Or, maybe It's not even a pheasant. I know you love hunting pheasants, but you hunt other birds too. I mean, if you had one place to go back to, where would it be and why?
Oh, Western Minnesota.
Really?
Western
From
Minnesota.
All the places you can hunt, Western Minnesota?
Yep.
Why?
It's, I won't name counties, but mm-hmm. if you look at Western Minnesota and look at the two tiers of counties adjoining South Dakota from the Iowa border, a third of the way, halfway up the state, mm-hmm. that's some prime pheasant country. And I sort of consider it now my home pheasant country. I love it out there. I got to be honest. I've hunted 4 states this year, and for largely in some of these states, there have been times when I'm thinking, boy, I wish I was in Western Minnesota right now. And maybe it's because I know some of the properties and stuff like that. But mm-hmm. I would say, there's probably places I could shoot more pheasants, but there's probably places I don't love as much and enjoy as much. So that's sort of it. Just a simple answer of I sort of consider it my home ground. these days. And I tell you what, I've advised several people through the years. You got a question. Back to the email that started this. Where can I hunt?
Mm-hmm.
A couple of years ago, I advised a couple folks from my hometown. They said, we want to stop in Western Minnesota on our way to South Dakota and hunt for a couple of days. Well, they never left Western Minnesota. They had never bought their South Dakota license yet.
Yeah.
They found some spots, and they said, and it was December, they said, we can shoot 3 birds a day. We can hunt at 9 a.m. We don't have to buy a South Dakota license. They already had their Minnesota license, and they never left. And they hunted that western tier and had a great time. So for me, it'd be Western Minnesota just for if I had one more, that would mean the most to my heart. You know what I mean?
Yep, definitely. I've spent a few days there already this year, and quite a few birds out there. So it's definitely worth your time to travel there. Carp, appreciate it. Hope you have a successful rest of the season. You can check out his articles coming out in a couple of weeks in the Pheasants Forever Journal and future journals to come. All you have to do is be a member of Pheasants Forever, and that comes right into your mailbox. Quarterly? Is it quarterly, Carp?
Yeah, quarterly. And then we also have the Upland Bird Hunting Super Issue every year, the Upland World's biggest and best publication. That's sort of the bonus issue. It's a Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever issue. And that covers all upland, not just pheasants or quail. It's all upland hunting, and it's a great issue too. So you get that and all the other benefits of membership, along with, supporting the Pheasants Forever habitat mission.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. One day I want to have a cover shot on the front of that magazine, and the artwork. I mean, just the photos have just been so spectacular lately. You're doing a very good job, so keep it up.
Thank you. Thanks, Travis.
Yep. Once again, want to thank North Dakota Tourism for helping us to make this podcast possible. To beg your limit this fall in North Dakota, visit legendarynd.com. And don't forget to download the Onyx Hunt app to help plan your hunting adventures and find those pieces of property that are open to the public and full of wild birds. Current episodes of The Flush are airing right now on the Outdoor Channel. Catch the action every week, Monday, Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday. We'll be back next week with another episode of The Flush podcast. I believe we're talking bird dog nutrition. We hope you'll join us.